This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, September 11th, 2023. Case file number 1271, written by Forrest Hopkins. The Coconut of Time. I'd like to preface this by saying that neither my husband nor I do any sort of drugs, suffer from any mental illness, or abuse alcohol. We drank occasionally, but had not been drinking that night. It happened about 8 months ago. We lived in a small apartment with our 2 young children and our dog, while we saved up for a down payment on a home. It was a typical Monday night around 7 p.m. We had just cleaned up after dinner, my husband was surfing the web, and I was relaxing on the couch. I was reading the back of a cake mix, trying to decide if I had time to bake it, let it cool, frost it, and eat it before I needed to be in bed. My husband was watching a video on the internet. He said something funny about it, we both laughed. Then, bam, I woke up, face down in bed. My clock read 8 a.m. exactly. My alarm hadn't been turned on. I was very confused and could smell the strong scent of coconut. I sat up and looked at my husband, who was also just waking up. He looked at me with a really confused look, and we both jumped out of bed and ran to our kids' room. They were in bed asleep. We went into the living room, and the second our dog saw us, she started whimpering and sort of army crawling towards us. It was such unusual behavior for her. I had never seen her act that way before, and have never since. Nothing looked out of order in our apartment aside from one small detail. The cake mix I'd been looking at that night was gone. I searched everywhere for that cake mix and never found it. Another odd detail from that day is that we all were dressed in our pajamas when we woke up except my youngest. He was in the jeans and t-shirt he had been wearing the night before. Neither my husband nor I would have ever put him to bed like that. Neither of us have any memory of getting into our pajamas or anything else after laughing at the comment he made about the video. We, already late for work, both called in sick that day. We spent the day talking about it and trying to make sense of it. At some point that day, he asked me if I had smelled coconut when I woke up. We never found the source of the smell. To this day, I can't look at a cake mix or smell coconut without feeling a little anxious and sick. Bonus file written by SM1020, The Mystery of the Wet-Haired Apparition. In college, I was roommates with my childhood best friend for about 2 years. We are very trusting with each other. We would go into each other's rooms freely and grab whatever we needed. To borrow clothes, hairbrushes, perfume, etc. No questions asked, just a knock if we were in the room to let each other know we were going in. Our rooms are across the hall from each other, with the hall facing the kitchen. So from the kitchen, you could see down the hall where our rooms were. At the time, my friend had very long black hair and she's very fair-skinned. One day, I get home from work, with my headphones in my ear, talking to my mom about my day. I go into the kitchen and grab a snack. I see her walk out of my room and go into mine, leave my room and go back into hers. She looked like she just got out of the shower, her hair was soaking wet and she was wrapped in a white towel. Her long black hair is what I distinctly remember. Also, she made no eye contact with me, but I didn't think it was weird. I didn't say anything to her since borrowing each other's stuff was normal. I'm still on the phone with my mom, so I don't think much of it. I grab my snack, hang up on my mom, and go into my room to watch TV. I figured she's getting ready to go somewhere and we'll talk later. About an hour passes and I go into the kitchen to clean up the plate I ate on. I see her in the kitchen making something to eat and I tell her, "Hey, what did you grab from my room earlier? Did you find what you needed?" She looks at me like I was crazy and says, "What are you talking about?" So I say, "Yeah, earlier when I got home, I saw you go into my room and grab something. Did you get what you needed?" Sorry I didn't say hi, I was on the phone with my mom. She asked me if I'm sure I saw her. I said yes, 100%. She tells me to grab my phone and go to her car ASAP, that she needs to show me something. I had my phone on me, and she grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter along with her purse and she dragged me out of the front door and into her car. She then tells me she got home maybe 5 minutes before we started talking. She had spent the night with her boyfriends and hadn't been home all day. So she has no idea who I saw, I'll never forget the look on her face when she told me this. Complete fear and panic. She called the cops, and they came along with the apartment manager. They checked the whole apartment and found no one, nothing amiss, and they were in there a while, checking every nook and cranny. The manager got maintenance to change our locks and gave us new keys that day. My friend then tells me that for a week, she'd been hearing noises from her bathroom like bottles moving, and when she went to check, she found nothing. I have no idea who I saw going in and out of our rooms, but it looked exactly like my friend. I don't drink or do drugs, not on meds. This was in 2014, and I still freak out when I think about it. Case file number 1272, written by NMS GTB 0308. The Guardian Angel on 4 Legs. Back in 2008, I lived near my college in an apartment. My apartment was set back from the main road quite a bit and was in a wooded and hilly area. One night, I was out running near sundown. I'm at the bottom of a hill that's behind my apartment, so it was near the end of my run. I look up ahead at the top of the hill and notice 3 guys on bikes just sitting there. Being a 20-year-old female, my spidey senses started tingling. I tell myself I'm psyching myself out and it'll be fine, so I keep running. I'm about halfway up the hill. The 3 guys are still just sitting there, facing my direction. I don't have a phone or anything, and nowhere else to go, so I tell myself I'll just run as hard as I can and scream if I need to. Suddenly, I hear something coming up beside me. I look to my right and see a German Shepherd. He's running alongside me. I've never seen this dog before in my life. I can't explain it, but I just knew I'd be okay now. I continued running up the hill with this random dog beside me. When we're approaching the guys, this dog gets slightly ahead of me and runs directly in front of me instead of to my right. He gets to the guys and stops dead in his tracks. I continue running and past the guys without even making eye contact. Once I'm past the guys, the dog catches back up to me and continues running alongside me. He stays with me until I take the turn into my apartment's very well lit parking lot. He disappears into the trees as quickly as he appeared. I took that route at the same exact time every single day for weeks and would drive down that road often, hoping to come across him again. No luck. I never saw him again. My friends are all convinced he was a guardian angel making sure I stayed safe. I'm not really a believer, so I don't know, but it's the most creepy, bizarre, and awesome thing to ever happen to me. Case file number 1273, written by Nova Boubert. Maybe I'm already dead? My father passed away over this past winter after a long battle with leukemia. He and I were close, and he actually passed away when my fiancé and I were having some issues, and I decided to spend the night at my parents' house. He had wanted me to handle everything when he passed, so that my mother wouldn't have to. He knew she'd be a mess and knew I could still maintain a strong exterior even when being an emotional wreck on the inside. So weirdly, it felt like he waited until I was there, and unfortunately, the image of him lifeless the next morning is something I don't know if I'll ever get over. Anyway, I decided to stay with my mother for a while, through the holidays at least, to help her adjust to being alone for the first time in 50 plus years. I was staying in one bedroom that was upstairs. She still slept in her bedroom on the main floor. My partner and I were still having issues, so I wasn't sleeping well. I was up late most nights and just stressed from all the angles. Was also out of work at the time and stressing about interviews. One night while I'm laying in bed watching TV, I get a text alert. When I look at my phone, I have a message from my mother that reads, "I know you're here with me." That seemed like an odd 3 a.m. text, so I replied, "Are you okay?" I didn't get a reply, so I decided to go downstairs and check on her. She was sleeping in her bedroom, snoring away. I was weirded out but figured I'd ask her in the morning if she remembered messaging me and then immediately falling asleep. Before heading back upstairs, I went into the kitchen to grab some water. And while passing through the living room, I saw her phone charging on a side table. I grabbed my water and went back upstairs to double check the timestamp on the message, thinking maybe it actually come through earlier or something, maybe some kind of delay, and in the morning I asked my mother about it, and she had no idea what I was talking about. She went and grabbed her phone from the living room and seemed to be as freaked out as I was. We kind of laughed it off awkwardly and said it was my dad reaching out from beyond the grave and left it at that. But it's always bothered me, the way it was worded. If my dead father were to text me, wouldn't it be, "Just know I'm here with you," or "I'll always be with you," something along those lines. But instead it said, "I know you're here with me," as if I've died too, or am soon going to. Or it read like something a living person would say to the dead. I've thought maybe he's in another timeline now where the family is all together. I just don't know. I think about this often because I have no explanation for receiving the text since the phone was in a room alone when I received a message from it, and even resolving to it being delivered much later than it was sent, I do believe my mother in her confusion about it. She didn't send it. She doesn't use her cell phone much anyway, and was using it even less because she was overwhelmed by people calling that, and the house phone to check in on her. Just needed to get this off my chest and see if there's any other interesting theories about what it might have meant. Maybe I'm dead. Maybe my dad is alive in an alternate universe. Case file number 1274, written by M. Norlery. The Whiskered Guardian Angel. A random cat on the street once protected me from a man who I didn't realize was following me. I was, stupidly, talking on my phone while walking home at night. I saw a man who was talking to himself near a park, and I deliberately chose to walk down another street to avoid him. In the middle of my phone conversation, this orange cat comes up beside me and starts walking next to me. We walked in tandem for about 3 blocks, me telling the person I was talking to how funny this was. Suddenly, the cat starts to turn around and head back the other way. I look and see that same man I'd seen earlier, who had changed his original direction and had been following me for a few blocks. The cat got in between us and howled at him until he turned around and went another way. Then the cat and I walked another block together, at which point he peeled off into a yard. I double-checked, and the man had disappeared. I can't be sure that the man wished me harm, but I know I wouldn't have noticed him if it weren't for the cat. I never believed in guardian angels or anything of that sort until I had that experience. Creepy file number 116, written by Sam4WX, The Cab Driver's Dark Link. I went to the University of Virginia at the same time that Morgan Harrington disappeared, which was my second year there, aka sophomore year. Sadly to say, because she wasn't a student, she was in town for a Metallica concert. Her death was salacious, but it didn't really strike fear into the student body like it did when Hannah Graham would go missing 5 years later, but I'm getting ahead of myself. About a week or so after Morgan's death in 2009, me and my guy friend were at a grocery store right outside of campus getting snacks around 10 p.m. Bus service had ended, so we decided to make use of a cab service that the university had set up to make sure students had access to rides in case they were drunk or just needed transpo. The university pays the bill up front and charges you later. So we get into this guy's cab and he immediately starts bringing up Morgan's disappearance. This wasn't so strange because everyone was talking about it. It was national news. But I'm an introvert with a good memory, so I remember just about every conversation over 3 minutes long I've ever had, especially with strangers. He starts talking about police theories about the case, and my friend, who went on to get a master's in gothic horror, starts talking about how some people thought a cult was involved. Basic speculative nonsense. In addition to that, I remember the guy looking at me through the rearview mirror. I won't say I never forget a face, but this conversation was so macabre that it stuck with me even years later. Anyway, he dropped us off and we made it home safe. Fast forward 5 years. I'm in grad school 1,000 miles away, and Hannah's disappearance is national news. Fortunately in this case, they have video surveillance. You can see her walking away with a big African-American guy with dreadlocks. They get an ID and his face is on the news everywhere. I don't recognize him. They eventually catch this guy in Texas, just an hour or so away from where I was in school at the time. As days go by, they're profiling this guy, and his DNA matches samples found on Morgan's remains, found 3 months after her disappearance in 2009. A picture comes up on the screen of what he looked like 5 years before, and my heart stops. There are no dreadlocks. His hair is clean cut, he's about 40 pounds lighter, and his beard is short. He is, I'm 97% certain, the same man who drove us home that night. He lured both Morgan and Hannah with his cab. Every now and then I think, what would have happened if I hadn't have been with my male friend that night? I'm pretty sure it was his idea to go out so late, but still. Or what if he had been a girl? Bonus file, written by the old guy from Up. Spine-tingling footsteps in the night. When I was in 3rd grade, I moved to a new town and into a new house. We lived in a camper in the backyard of the house while we renovated it. It was a pretty old house. Anyway, during renovation, we found all sorts of stuff in the walls. Old bottles, old glasses, letters, old newspapers, old pictures of children in school clothes. It was a 2-story house, and the stairs were kind of a focal point for all sorts of creepy stuff. So once you got to the top of the stairs, there was a little landing before it went into 2 bedrooms. At night, we would always leave the light on in the landing in case we had to get up to use the bathroom. Me and one brother shared a room, and the other room was for our older brother. I refused to sleep upstairs due to how creeped out I was, so I always slept downstairs on the couch. One weekend, my sister, who is older than both my brothers, came to visit and was in my oldest brother's bedroom alone, as we were all at school and my mom was at work. As she was sitting up there watching TV, she heard footsteps coming up the stairs and called out, as she had thought my mom was home early from work. No response other than the footsteps turning around and heading back down the stairs. When she got up to look, there was no one home and all doors locked. It doesn't stop there. My oldest brother was left home alone for a week while me and my other brother and mom and dad went on a week-long vacation. Naturally, he had his girlfriend over for a couple nights to keep him company. One night she got up to pee at around 3 a.m. and went downstairs to the bathroom where she said she heard children whispering. A couple nights later, around 3 to 4 a.m., his girlfriend woke up my brother saying someone was in the house. They heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Since the light was on in the landing, they could see a shadow underneath the door like someone was standing there, and the doorknob began to shake. Luckily, it was locked. They both started to freak out and my brother jumped out of bed. We had some of those dumb display samurai type swords that aren't even sharp, and he grabbed one of those and went towards the door. They heard more footsteps running down the stairs, and he bravely or stupidly followed down the stairs where he was met with an empty house. All windows and doors were closed and locked. He called the police, but nothing came of it. Case file number 1275, written by Worthless Commotion, The Midnight Double. My husband recently took an overnight job to help us out. He's only been out there for 2 weeks and works overnights and evenings, 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Last night was no different. He left home around 8:15 p.m. Our daughter, age 11, and I decided to make it a movie night. Around 11 p.m., I heard keys in my back door and the usual sounds my husband makes when he comes home. I creeped out to the kitchen to make sure it was him, and it was. He told me he needed to grab his knee compression sleeve, walked down the hall, said hi to our daughter as he passed the living room, and went upstairs. He came back down, gave me a kiss, and left again. We finished our movie and went to bed. In the morning, when he got home, I made a joking comment about him forgetting his knee sleeve. He was genuinely confused as I recalled the previous night. Our daughter confirmed everything I said, and he was still acting confused. I pulled up our security motion camera on my phone to show him when he popped in quickly, but there was no footage from the night before or any other night of him coming home after he's left for work. My daughter and I both heard him, saw him, and I touched him, but he was never home during that time. Nothing else out of the ordinary happened that night. We seriously have no idea what happened. Creepy file number 117, written by American Cheese. The day the school genius vanished. There was a kid in another class at my school in 6th grade that was a genius. I don't mean like, oh, he's really smart because he doesn't need to do the homework and still gets 100s. Like he was doing advanced calculus with a local college professor after school. This kid was smarter than everyone. So one day, our computer system for the entire school goes down. I was in a poorer area at the time, so this was normal. This has occurred many times, so normally wouldn't affect us because we barely use laptops and such. The only class that wasn't affected was the computer class. This kid was in that computer class. 3 or so hours later, when I'm in class with him during social studies, 3 guys with FBI jackets on and our local chief escorted him out of the building. We were told nothing. The parents were told nothing. It never hit the news. To this day, we have no clue what he did, except every single teacher I've asked about this says they were also told nothing. I haven't seen the kid since, and I can't find a trace of him going on to another school or ending up in trouble. He just fell off the face of the earth with his parents. Yeah, I forgot to mention that parents also disappeared and no one really looked for them after a month or so. Bonus file written by Character Limit Sue, when fearful screams echoed through the halls. A few years ago, I was volunteering with some friends in a remote region of Tanzania. We were there to teach English, but it was total volunteerism. Very few people in the region spoke English because it was completely unnecessary. The type of charity work someone thought up in a boardroom 1,000 miles away. Anyway, we were staying in this old hotel up on the top floor, maybe like 6th floor. We chose the top floor for the views, but it also gave us privacy. The hotel was way oversized for the small town it was in. We were more or less the only people staying there. There were probably 20 rooms on the floor, and it was all very open. On each floor, a central tiled staircase opened straight into a lobby, with the rooms accessed via various hallways. We had 2 rooms, with 2 of us in each. The rooms were basic but clean, all tiled. There was also an open window above each door, so we could shout out to our friends staying in the room next door. We'd been there a couple of months and got used to having the place to ourselves. No one ever came up beyond the ground floor except the maids on occasion. One of the quietest places I've ever slept. That was until one night. I woke up to see my friend sitting bolt upright. We could hear someone running on the stairs a few floors below. The slapping of the feet on the tiles echoed up the staircase as they ran. Then they started screaming. I saw a woman scream and was guttural, absolutely raw and animalistic. It was a while ago, but I can still hear it clearly. She eventually reaches our floor and starts banging on doors. She's still screaming. She's screaming for help and coming down our corridor. She sounded terrified. By this time I was up, had grabbed a knife we'd bought to cut fruit. Lord knows what I thought I was going to do with it, and I was heading for the door. Just as I reached it, my friend grabs me and drags me back. He gestures for me to stay quiet. I would trust this guy with my life, so I do as I'm told. We stand there in silence in the dark. The woman reaches our thin wooden door. She's slapping on it and screaming out for help. We can hear her so clearly because of the open window above. She's also just a couple of feet away. She's crying out and sobbing, scratching at the door. My friend and I stand in silence just on the other side. We're frozen. Honest to God, I was terrified. After about 10 minutes, we hear her receding down the corridor, no longer crying out so loudly. We hear other people's voices in the stairs and then nothing, as the place falls silent again. I turn to my friend, who looked me dead in the eye. Calmly, he explains, "She was shouting in English, mate, all the way. She knew we were here. She knew what door to come to." She also wasn't alone. I heard footsteps on the floor before you woke up. They were trying to get that door open so they could rob us. Had you opened that door, they would have done so. Suddenly, I felt a bit ridiculous with my little fruit knife. I just sat in stunned silence. It made sense. Before long, my friend went back to sleep and I was left with my thoughts. To this day, I have no idea if my friend was right. It still sits with me, whether we could have helped someone that night or not. My gut tells me my friend was right, he usually is. But man, when I think back to how close I came to opening that door. We spoke to the manager and staff next day. None of them had any idea what we were talking about. They were very apologetic though, and even set up a security watch for the rest of our stay. Case file number 1276, written by Bobby D. Bob. Unexplained Dome of Light in the Vermont Wilderness. So my brother, myself, and our friend were driving through Vermont heading to a cabin to go snowboarding for the week. I was sitting in my brother's car when I noticed a bright red light, it's night, in the sky. It was coming from deep in the woods but was shining in a huge dome shape. The light seemed to be restricted to the dome. The light did not seem to travel far, but it was very bright. We were so baffled, we pulled over at this small gas station on the road to get a better look. There were about 6 other people who seemed to live there also looking at the light. They were telling us there were no buildings or factories out there whatsoever. As our conversation continued, the light seemed to diminish, but then almost imploded on itself and burst out with a huge white light that lit up the sky and surrounding area. Then about 10-ish seconds after this change, a huge wind gust came at us from the direction of the light. I'd say it was about 15 to 25 mile per hour winds. I hike, and I'm just making comparisons to the wind on mountains. Then the light just began to fade away, so we hopped in our cars and kept going. The light didn't fully dim for about 10 minutes. Craziest crap ever. Case file number 1277, written by Axelrod. Mysterious light pursues teens in the dark. Back in high school, I want to say it was my sophomore year, 10th grade, my friends and I used to sneak out of our parents' house late at night, and we used to meet up at the campus and vandalize, smoke, mess around, just stupid, troubled teen things. Well, one night, we met up at the school to smoke and hang out. During our session, we noticed a very random and bizarre looking light appear in the baseball dugout next to us. We were in the baseball field dugout. At first we thought that maybe it was a school janitor or guard working late, but we weren't too worried by that thought. We kept our eyes on it as it started moving out of the dugout towards us. Then it finally appeared in the center of the field, in the center of all the plates, where even at night it was fully visible due to the lights, but we saw nothing. Just the light we first noticed, which happened to become brighter as I got closer. We saw no body or silhouette of any kind holding this light. It appeared to be floating. Once I realized that it was just a floating light, I turned to my friends, only to realize that they ran off without me. That's when I decided to grab all the stuff they left behind, throw it in my backpack, and run. As I got a bit of distance from it, I looked back only to see that it had ran through the 2 fences we had to climb over. That's when I really started crapping my pants, so I started sprinting towards my friends, and we ended up running for about half a mile before we lost it in a neighborhood that one of my friends in our friend group had lived in. We hopped this backyard gate to lose whatever was chasing us in the middle of the night. To this day, we don't know what the light was. I've only seen it one other time at the same school while I was taking a run on the track it had. It was definitely the creepiest thing any of my friends and I have experienced. And we're the type who have played with Ouija boards, amateur ghost hunting, and that sort of thing. Nothing ever scared us as bad as this thing. Bonus file written by iBumGaze808. The Mystery of Basement Bangings. Just a normal Saturday night. I was watching TV home alone with my 2 dogs when I heard a banging sound coming from the basement. Legit sounded like somebody was just banging on something on the appliances we had down there. Now, there is no access into the basement from down there, only through the upstairs room that I was in and knew nobody could have come in and got past me. So with this knowledge, I was not as scared as you may think, more curious as to what the heck the noise was. One of the 2 dogs who is a meathead and wants to fight everybody also heard the noise and was now bolting down into the basement to investigate. I get down and see that it is my other dog banging his head into our dryer and chest freezer, which are next to each other. My meathead dog just stood there watching confused. So I approach my other dog and calm him down, and we all go upstairs. Now this freaked the heck out of me and upset me, as it seemed such a very strange behavior for my dog to do. Fast forward only 30 minutes or so, the banging starts again. I instantly look over to my dog, but he's lying down, but now also aware of the noise downstairs. We run down into the basement, and there is Meathead now banging his head in between the appliances. Again, I now calm the Meathead down and we all go back upstairs. Nothing has ever happened again since that night, 3 years now, so that ruled out brain tumors, which is what I read online about why maybe dogs bang their heads. But 2 dogs suddenly on the same night, in the same place, and it only affecting one of them at any given time. 3 years and the three of us never talked about that night. A few folk say it may have been a rodent treat or toy they were after. No, they were frenzied and hyperventilating. When they get things stuck under anything, they just cry and get me to get their stuff. I guess it boils down to just knowing your dogs. I know instantly from their body language just what the deal was, but that night, I have never seen them so frenzied and upset. Also, it is otherwise a very nice basement, as basements go. I have never had a pest problem down there or any other part of the house. Somebody mentioned that if it only happened 3 years ago, why did I not make a video of it? My first instinct was to help my dogs, to stop them harming themselves. At no point was my first thought to go and grab my phone to capture the moments on film. Case notes for file 1271, The Coconut of Time. Every now and again, I read a story such as this one that just blows my mind. There are so many novel anomalies in this. Of course, like smelling the coconut. I'm just sitting here at the loss, what does that mean? You both smelled the coconut as evidence from him asking you later in the day. You never mentioned it first. What does that mean? Aliens never produce a coconut smell, to my knowledge. I tried looking that up and no, it's not a common aspect of time loss or any anomaly. Coconut is just coconut. Also, your dog acting scared is a very important detail. It means something did happen in a way to affect her too. Maybe you both disappeared from the apartment and then reappeared and she simply missed you. But it sounds even more than that. The abrupt event affected her too. If she could talk and relay her experience, it may have been just as sliced as yours. But then being dressed in pajamas, but one kid not being. Hell, this experience is so all over the place, all I can think of is an extremely powerful trickster warping reality in 20 different directions that don't connect, just to mess with you. What else could it be? Case notes for the bonus file, The Mystery of the Wet-Haired Apparition. So nothing being missing, and you saw a woman, not a man, one that was wet from the shower, leads me to think it is very unlikely to be an actual intruder. That said, your roommate was very smart to contact the police and have the place checked out thoroughly. You never know, better safe than sorry. The answer to the mystery is repeating signals, repeating patterns. If a soul disconnects from the host body, or rather splits in two, with half staying behind, the other half does what it knows, which he's already done a million times before, is to shower in their apartment. These soul severance events aren't going to produce a soul wandering around curing cancer or anything novel like that. I don't think that's how it works. More interesting a question in my mind than what happened seems clear enough is why. The catalyst is what gnaws at me. She was with her boyfriend, presumably having a good time, so why would her soul split temporarily then? Is it a certain mindset required of being relaxed and happy? I don't think it's that. Is it something forcing the split? And now time for the question of the day. Is there a time where you did something that seems so out of character that most people wouldn't believe it? For me, it was the last day in high school. I only did 1 year, not even a full year, and the last day when I was checking out, I started a food fight in the cafeteria area. Maybe it does seem like me. I am kind of a trickster, but no one else in school would have believed it. And I don't think anyone found out. Don't tell anyone. So much wasted food. Should have ate it. Case notes for file 1272. The Guardian Angel on 4 legs. The good boy guardian angel. I could see that. Sounds like a protective act that Mr. Ben would engage in as well. He always bangs his head on the wall, but he always knows the best time to ask for food as well, so smart and dumb. In this case, was the guardian angel embodied in the dog? A type of angelic spirit that possessed the dog? Or maybe rather directed the dog still in free will towards you somehow? I'm not sure. I suppose it's unknowable. But what is knowable is that you do have someone looking out for you. Now keep in mind, this doesn't mean you can never be harmed. But it does mean that we aren't as defenseless as it can often feel like. Not as alone. That's a comforting thought. Case notes for file 1273. Maybe I'm already dead? There is real trouble in communication from the other side. I don't think you die and then pop into a temporary ethereal plane of existence sitting at a computer or with a phone. Your father had to figure out a way to message you, and maybe it was with automated phone prompts that he could cobble together, which is why it sounded a bit off. But just enough like him to make you wonder, to give you that kind of sign. I'm still of the opinion that your father's soul is lingering behind. It is but a mere fragment of it, a small chunk that isn't sentient as you and I are, because the bulk of the soul makes a transit over to a new universe where he never died. Over there he showed leukemia who's the real boss. If that's the case, the simple soul morsel of your father accomplished his task, letting you know there's more going on than meets the eye. Death isn't the finality most think it is. If that's all he wanted, I think his energy dissipated away fully in that moment, and now he only exists as a full soul in that other universe. In fact, maybe the soul fragments that linger behind don't dissipate, but instead reunite with the full soul in the quantum immortality spectrum, back in the other universe, but only after their purpose here is completed. So soul vanishes from our universe, but they don't dissipate. I like that idea. And now time for the question of the day. If one wish of yours could come true, what would it be? So speaking purely as a selfish wish, not curing cancer or noble causes like that, I'd have to go with the ability to fly. The travel opportunities would be beyond comprehension. That said, I'd have to bundle up because it gets kinda cold up there. Unless I travel slowly, I'd also have to have a whole getup, like goggles and everything, because when you travel fast, the wind makes it so you can't even breathe. I remember skydiving and going at 120 miles an hour towards the planet. You can't breathe at all. It's kind of terrifying. So there's that to keep in mind. But yeah, the ability to just pick up, fly wherever I wanted to. No need for a driver's license then, or an e-bike that can't go fast enough. I mean, you got super strength and all those things, but I think I'd just go with flying. Just take a vacation overseas. Gotta stay low to avoid the radar though, as Iron Man found out. Case notes for file 1274. The Whiskered Guardian Angel. So a couple instances this week of guardian angels either possessing or taking the form of animals to ward off potential dangers. Here's a question to ponder on. Do guardian angels have access to future buffered knowledge? So do they know what would happen if they don't intervene, or do they just have to wing it? See what I did there? No, but really, maybe they don't have foresight. Maybe they just have to judge situations case by case and use their best judgment. And also use whatever is available in the area. No other humans to possess, so an animal will have to do in a pinch. And if you ever been on the receiving end of a cat gone wild, let me tell you, I'd rather fight a human. Cats have built-in weapons. Case notes for the creepy file number 116. Cab driver's dark link. Ah yes, blending in as a cab driver is not too uncommon a strategy for serial killers and other nefarious folk. No one thinks about the cab driver, or I guess Uber drivers these days. And now I'm thinking about the BBC Sherlock show, the first episode, where Sherlock is led into the cab because that's the villain of the first act. At least you weren't involved in some daring game of Russian pills where you have to guess which one is poison and which one isn't, and he always wins. Don't like that. What concerns me is how adept some are lying, though. Deception, blending in as normal people when under the mask. They're human monsters, but only inside. Always be on the lookout for signs. It's typical of serial killers to enjoy discussing their own crimes, their own cases. It gives them a sense of primal power as much as the act itself, and be advised that the more charming someone is, it's not necessarily that the more charming they are, the more likely they are a serial killer, but it does play in very well for it, because if someone is charming and very attractive with the halo effect, you lower your guard. So don't lower your guard, especially with someone you don't know. I mean, after months of knowing someone, sure, but not at first glance. If you meet someone attractive, don't just get into their car because they're attractive. You don't want to end up in a bathtub full of ice or in, 6 feet below the ground. Case notes for the bonus file. Spine-tingling footsteps in the night. Squatters living in the walls? Yeah, that always creeped me out as a possibility. But examining the evidence you listed, old bottles, old photos of children in school clothes, doesn't sound like the items that homeless, disheveled people, down on their luck or worse, would be bringing into a home, especially the pictures. But then the doorknob shaking suggests it was flesh and blood human, or at least a corporeal being, not a spirit. A monster hiding in the walls would be even worse, but honestly, it could be anything. Whatever it was, though, it sounds like it fled after that night. But I'd never be able to sleep in there again, would you? Especially because everything is locked. So if someone was inside and fled, they had to manage to lock it from the outside, so they had to have a key as well. And now time for the quote of the day. The fact that a great many people believe something is no guarantee of its truth. W. Somerset Maugham. So you have the classic example of Einstein saying to a group of scientists, 100 scientists, why 100? If I'm wrong, 1 would suffice. And so, if a lot of people believe something, maybe the odds are placed higher on it being correct, but maybe not by as much as most think. Common knowledge or common wisdom, what is accepted by everyone, may not necessarily be true. It doesn't mean it's false, too, so don't go into the other side where any knowledge that is widely believed is wrong. No. It's just that it may be wrong, and you shouldn't be against questioning things just because a lot of people believe them. That's what I would say. So always have an open mind and try to examine facts as objectively as possible. Not an easy thing to do. Case notes are filed 1275. The Midnight Double. I was thinking this would be a classic soul travel episode, but the lack of him on camera is wild and inexplicable. Souls appear on camera like anything else. They're not vampires immune to mirrors or reflections. So what on earth could this be? A doppelganger doesn't seem right. Those evoke strong emotions of fear, even dread in those near them. I also read further in the comments that the knee compressor was gone. Your husband remembers having it all night and never coming home to get it. This has all the signs of being in a new universe. But why would you and your child have jumped over? But then again, random death and all that does happen. Just recently I saw a video of a residential home literally blowing up entirely. Not sure what the reason was for it, but stuff like that can happen. Perhaps on a similar note this happened to you and now you're in a different universe. It would explain everything, but it's very rare, of course. Case notes for the creepy file number 117. The day the school genius vanished. So a boy genius who hacked into the FBI mainframe and got on the radar, they most likely recruited him. This happens far more often than you might imagine or think. Even outright criminals get brought in if the agency thinks they can extract enough value out of them, weighted against the crime in question, but in this case, I guess especially him being young, they can let it go and slide and just say, well, he's going to grow up to be an incredible asset, and of course, his parents would go into witness protection, something along those lines, I would guess. That kid has an interesting future ahead of him. Case notes for the bonus file. When fearful screams echoed through the halls. So yes, it's true, there's a common tactic of robbers in hotels, even at people's primary residences, to have a woman in distress bang on the door, cry out for help, so you'll lower your guard and open it up for them. Easier than breaking the door down or lockpicking it, if they can even do so. Most people are not the lockpicking lawyer, so you get this kind of strategy instead. That said, while this could be the case here, something about the description of the scream being so guttural suggests to me a more supernatural force, especially since management didn't know what you were talking about. Surely they would have heard it too. Although, because there's no one else in the hotel, pretty much as you described, no one else heard it, but they would, because they worked there. And in that case, why not call the cops? I mean, there are still cops in Tanzania, I'm pretty sure, right? So my guess is, this happened to other people who stayed in that hotel before, and they don't want to bring light to it, because it's not something you'd want to bring attention to. I mean, I doubt haunted hotel has a positive tourist factor. Maybe for us in the US, but not everywhere. And now time for the quote of the day. Be not afraid of growing slowly. Be afraid only of standing still. Chinese proverb. Yeah, it's the adage of if you're not moving forward, adapting, changing, improving, then you're actually sliding behind because the world is moving in its own right and everyone is progressing. So if you're stagnant, you're left behind. So yeah, you don't have to rush it, but always think of ways you could be improving your life. Make progress. Life is a video game in so many ways. Yeah, you don't have numbers above your head or a character screen with all the skills leveled to certain, denominations so you can know, oh, I'm at 99 woodcutting or something like that. I would love if that was the case, but sadly everything is hidden and it's all just up here. And so even if you're high level, you may prevent yourself from acting on that because of your own mindset. Believe in yourself and try to make some progress. Don't have to rush it, just some. Case notes for file 1276. Unexplained dome of light in the Vermont wilderness. So wind is caused by thermal delta. Hot and cold air occupy different pressures. Hot air rises, as we all know. Wind rushing in to fill a vacuum of hot air that rose up in your general area, near the light. It could also be an explosive force that's not exactly wind, it's more of a pressure wave. But I don't think this was an explosion, since that would easily have been heard from nearby, and given how far the light was, not that far, if it was an explosion, you wouldn't have 25-mile-per-hour gusts of wind. You'd have a pressure wave that would knock you back, break glass, all that kind of stuff. Maybe a kind of experimental thermal testing zone? But the locals at the gas station had never seen it, which makes it less likely. I saw a suggestion that this could be a meteor burning up. But I don't think so. It wouldn't be a static spot of light in the sky, it'd be moving. The glow from the meteor burning up would also fluctuate and is more orange and white than the kind of red you described. There'd also be a huge boom sound when it eventually crashed or burned up. Like I said, a pressure wave. These larger meteors literally explode apart in the air. There's one such instance fairly recently, a few years ago, in Russia. It can shatter windows from miles away. Another idea being kind of a controlled burn, maybe chemicals. The Ohio train derailment comes to mind. Some chemicals do burn bright red, and maybe flash very white before burning out completely. Case notes for file 1277. The mysterious light pursues teens in the dark. You don't mention the color, but if I had to guess, ball lightning is the most natural explanation for this, usually blue, but not always, and it's unclear what the various colors indicate. I doubt it's as simple as indicating the moral alignment of the spirit, blue is good and dark or red is bad. I don't think it meant any harm. Ball lightning is statically charged, but doesn't cause any actual damage outside of some electronics, lights flickering and stuff, maybe some slightly charred grass or something. I guess I'd run away too if a giant ball of electrified light was strolling towards me, just to be on the safe side. Maybe it's just some spirits that are lonely or something, but still, try to manifest as a human, and then I'll talk to you, but not as a giant ball of electricity. Case notes for the bonus file, The Mystery of Basement Bangings. Yeah, so if Mr. Ben was involved in anything potentially of risk to himself, the last thing I'd be thinking of is about taking a video. As for the strange behavior of both dogs, we know animals can be possessed by spirits, but it's odd, isn't it? To hop between both dogs, then fade away never to return after years? I don't know if that quite fits, but I'm not sure what else would compel your dogs to do this, and never again in all that time. Very strange one. And now time for the quote of the day. Opera is when a guy gets stabbed in the back and instead of bleeding, he sings. Ed Gardner. Opera is a very interesting thing, and there is some orchestral opera style music in some movies, or video games, like in the Halo theme song. If you don't know about that, look it up on YouTube, it's amazing. Or in the final battle in the Matrix trilogy against Mr. Smith, that orchestral piece, every time I want to be hyped up for something, or if I want to lift something heavy, I just listen to that and instant energy. It's amazing. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.